Good Shabbos. This past month, this year, marked the 40th Yortzeit, the 40th anniversary of the death of Rabbi Mordechai Kaplan, the founder of the Reconstructionist movement and of so much more in the American Jewish community. And I felt very strongly that we shouldn't let that moment pass, the 40th Yortzeit, because Rabbi Mordechai Kaplan had an influence and impact upon all of us, whether we know it or not simply because he was a founder or the principal founder of the Reconstructionist movement. So I want to say a little of his professional biography, some of his thinking and some of his impact upon us, and also connect it then to the Parsha and the holiday season that we're moving into. Why I say that Kaplan had so much impact upon all of us. I want to say first, he was born in 1881 in Lithuania. So he comes to America as a child in 1889 at the age of 8. And his principal biographer, Mel Scult, actually always points out, so the Statue of Liberty was 3 years old when he comes sailing into New York Harbor. His father came here to be an assistant to the chief rabbi of New York. That tells you how fluid the American Jewish community was at the time. The institutions were only starting to form. The chief rabbi of New York is a failed experiment. There was one chief rabbi of New York, and only one. And it didn't work, but Kaplan's father was here to be an assistant to the chief rabbi. And that brought 8-year-old Mordechai here, and he graduated from the Jewish Theological Seminary in 1899. That's the major seminary of the conservative movement, but there was no conservative movement at the time. Then he went to Eastern Europe and was ordained a rabbi, came back to New York City, and eventually, in addition to serving as an Orthodox rabbi, he got a master's degree in sociology from one of the first professors of sociology in the United States at Columbia University. That becomes important. In 1909, he was asked to be the dean of the Teachers College at the Jewish Theological Seminary in New York. And one of the reasons for his extensive influence is because he stayed there till 1962. 1909 to 1962. In 1912, he and another rabbi co-founded Young Israel. Have you ever heard of Young Israel? It's a right-wing Orthodox movement. Now it's right-wing, but then the point was they would give sermons in English. He was a co-founder of Young Israel. In 1913, he was present for the founding of the conservative movement. In 1916, he was involved in the Kehillah experiment, which was an early experiment in, Kehillah means community. So it was an early attempt at creating federations in America, Jewish federations, the federation system. In 1921, he founded a synagogue, which he called the Society for the Advancement of Judaism, so that they could put into action some of the things he was thinking about at the seminary. That became the first Reconstructionist synagogue, and of course, where the first bat mitzvah took place. In 1925, he was asked to represent the American Jewish community at the dedication of the founding of Hebrew University. He started in the 1920s. He also helped to start Camp Sedgwick, which was the first real educational Jewish summer camp. So he helped to start the educational Jewish summer camp movement, and was instrumental in founding the Camp Ramah system. In 1934, he published his magnum opus, Judaism as a Civilization, and put his thoughts out there in one place. 1935, the Reconstructionist magazine, followed then by the Reconstructionist foundation. Skipping ahead, in 1948, he spearheaded the founding of the University of Judaism in Los Angeles. In the 1950s, he brought together the Federation of Reconstructionist Congregations and Chavarot, and in 1962, he retired from the Jewish Theological Seminary. In 1968, his students founded the Reconstructionist Rabbinical College, which then necessitated a movement, and that's how the Reconstructionist movement starts. In that time, he also published many, many books, countless articles, taught many students, and most of the conservative rabbinate from 1909 to 1962. So he had a tremendous influence on the conservative movement, also on the Reform movement, and their move back to the embracing of Judaism as a peoplehood. Actually, he's thought to have coined that word, peoplehood, is an invention of his as well, that word. His central teaching can be summarized as follows. Judaism is the evolving religious civilization of the Jewish people. Evolving religious civilization of the Jewish people. And one of the key implications of that, by the way, is that Torah, if you think about it, it means Torah doesn't necessarily come from above, being written by God and coming down to earth, but Torah grows out of the life of the people upwards in response to God. So that is a what they say, a Copernican difference. It's a radical change in understanding and in thought. So, to say something about his thought, which is a huge task. So this is how I'm going to do it. I have this book here. Judaism Faces the 20th Century. Judaism Faces the 20th Century, a biography of Mordechai Kaplan. I am going to carefully read 3 paragraphs. And then I have 9 points that I have. Just 9 for no reason except that to make it easier to follow. Okay, they're not all long points either. So don't worry. Kaplan's argument was unambiguous. Neither orthodoxy nor reform was adequate to ensuring the continued existence of the Jewish people. Orthodoxy would fail because it would not keep pace with the times and stifled creative change. Quote, it precludes all conscious development in thought and practice and deprives Judaism of the power to survive in an environment that permits of free contact with non-Jewish civilizations. Unquote. One might think that reform allowed for creative interaction and evolution in a modern critical vein. But reform was likewise inadequate, Kaplan asserted. It is, quote, merely a negation of Judaism, unquote, and has as little in common with historic Judaism as has Christianity or ethical culture. He's also talking about Reform Judaism of an earlier day, by the way, because Reform Judaism has been very much influenced by Kaplan since then. Conservative Judaism has been influenced by Kaplan. Orthodoxy has been influenced by Kaplan since then. If you're in an Orthodox synagogue and they're having some type of bat mitzvah, even if it's not the same as we would have, that's part of Kaplan's influence. Transforming Judaism entailed an alteration in the concept of religion in general. Usually we conceive of religion as a body of ideas about the world, the afterlife, or the meaning of existence. Kaplan proposed a shift from ideas to social realities. This social viewpoint required a shift in the, quote, in the center of spiritual interest from the realm of abstract dogmas and traditional codes of law to the pulsating life of Israel. We will then realize that our problem is not how to maintain beliefs or uphold laws, but how to enable the Jewish people to function as a highly developed social organism and to fulfill the spiritual powers that are latent in it. Whatever will not advance the revitalization of the Jewish people must be changed. Or conversely, whatever contributes to Jewish Renaissance, whether it be the Hebrew language, upbuilding of Palestine, or efforts at Jewish defense on the political scene, must be viewed positively as a part of the total life or civilization of the Jewish people. I will take this apart, don't worry. Kaplan envisioned a three-point program. First, it was necessary to reinterpret the Jewish tradition into modern terms. Second, Jewish solidarity must be fostered through building the community in Palestine and establishing stronger communities in the diaspora. And third, a new code of Jewish practice needed to be formulated. This is reconstruction. So, point one. What is central to the practice of Judaism is how we do community. How we do community. Judaism is not a set of ideas. Judaism is not a set of practices. Judaism is a civilization. Therefore, first and foremost, Judaism is community. Point number two. That community must be ethical. It must practice justice and compassion. It is worthless if it is not practicing justice and compassion. Three, that community must have integrity. That community, which is Judaism, must value truth, both in word and in deed, and that includes in its words of prayer, which leads to the editing of the prayer book, and also in its teachings about past and present. Fourth, that community, which is Judaism, must exhibit an appreciation of the non-rational as well as the rational. Since human beings are full beings, not only rational, that means there must be an emphasis on the arts and music and celebration and observance and tradition and practice and prayer. Number five, point five, that community, which is Judaism, is to hold a unity of purpose rather than a unity of practice. Because the community is united by a sense of purpose, the community must be sustained by a shared participatory decision-making process. But the community is to hold a unity of purpose, which means we don't all have to be doing the same thing, but we are united by a sense of purpose. And decision-making can be done by looking into the community and developing some type of democratic process. Democracy, Kaplan taught, is an expression of communal unity with human dignity. Democracy is how you can have community which holds itself together but is not coercive, which can express a united sense of purpose without imposed uniformity. Six, the community's unifying purpose is to live and to celebrate and to support each other, to do justly, love compassion, and walk humbly, not arrogantly with your God. Walk humbly, not arrogantly. And as a point of principle, and as an expression of the Shema, this is another point, that community, which is Judaism, notes how all the many are one. Everything ultimately is interconnected. Everything ultimately is interconnected. And that is what leads to Kaplan's understanding of God, which he did not believe everyone had to hold on to. But Kaplan coined a term, a theological term, which he said he called God transnatural, not supernatural, not naturalism, transnaturalism. He used that to note how the whole tends to be greater than the sum of its parts. A blade of grass is more than all its constituent elements set next to each other. A human being is more than all of its parts set next to each other. A community is more than all the individual persons sitting next to each other. And so the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And so he applied that to the universe too. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And when the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, as naturalists, do we talk of finding God in some single aspect of nature? Or as supernaturalists, do we locate God as totally other and outside of the world? He said, as transnaturalists, we talk of God as rooted in our world and our community, and yet so much more than our world and our community. So Kaplan identified his view of God as transnatural, but he also did not hold that everyone had to agree with him in this regard to be a Jew or to be a Reconstructionist Jew. In fact, being a Reconstructionist Jew, as in being part of a Reconstructionist denomination or separate movement, was a bit of an afterthought for him. He did not set out to start another movement. And for most of his life of 102 years, which is why I'm still talking this long, he lived 102 years. Most of his life, he resisted creating yet another movement. Movements were not the point of what he was doing. He saw movements as being divisive. Vibrant Jewish life was what was important. Jewish life that is inspiring, ethical, just, compassionate, inclusive, elevating. Jewish life which turns the Jewish people into a living expression. Think of it as a living expression of the Kaddish prayer, which elevates the name of God more than any words can, through what it is, through what it does. Jewish life which turns each Jew into an expression of the Torah narrative. But it was about vibrant Jewish life, ultimately. So the Reconstructionist movement, and this is already point number 9, the Reconstructionist movement, which formed around the Reconstructionist Rabbinical College, was created to teach a Reconstructionist approach to Jewish life and thought after Kaplan retired from the Jewish Theological Seminary. And it envisioned, the movement envisioned each Jewish congregation taking this call to be Torah community and shaping it in the course of its own life. By that point, the focus of the movement became that each congregation in the movement, each synagogue, each Reconstructionist chavurah was to be a hothouse, so to speak, to develop specific approaches to the question of how to be Jewish community, since being Jewish community was the point. Each community was asked, in the movement, was asked to challenge itself through the study of tradition. Let tradition challenge the contemporary world, and let the contemporary world challenge tradition. And out of that Torah study challenge, each community was to emerge as its own answer to the question, how do we be Torah? How do we do Jewish community in our world today? And then the vision of the Reconstructionist movement was that each of these communities would share with each other what they have uncovered, and the movement would put forth Torah in the making. It's a very dynamic approach to Jewish life and to Jewish tradition, which is why when I first became a rabbi and people would say, Rabbi, do we do this on Shabbat? Can we do this on Shabbat? I mean, especially we were here, can we do such and such on Shabbat? I'd say, well, we haven't worked it out yet. We haven't done the study and the living it out and let that practice develop from out of us. Don't just ask me what we're going to do or what we're not going to do so that we can all go and do something else. No, we're going to work it out together, and what Shabbat is can develop out of us, in us being community as we study it, learn it, and live it. How do we be Jewish community today? This is the question each Reconstructionist community is challenged to ask. So in this week's Parsha, we read about Jacob's wrestling with God. Jacob was left alone, and there wrestled a man with him until the breaking of the day. And when he saw, and again, we're going to get, as with any wrestle, and you lose track of the arms and the legs, we're going to start losing track of who is who in here. When he saw that he prevailed not against him, he touched the hollow of his thigh. And the hollow of Jacob's thigh was strained as he wrestled with him. And he said, "Let me go, for dawn is breaking." And he said, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." And he said to him, "What is your name?" And he said, "Jacob." And he said, "Your name shall no more be called Jacob, but Yisrael, ki sarita im Elohim v'anashim v'tochal. Your name shall be Israel, for you have wrestled or striven with God and with men and have prevailed." And Jacob asked him and said, "Tell me, I pray you, your name." And he said, "Why is it that you ask me after my name?" And he blessed him there. Yisrael means struggling with God, wrestling with God. We do that through wrestling with Torah, through studying Torah, learning Torah, living out Torah, being a venue for Torah to emerge into this world, Torah in the making. That is what makes us the children of Israel, the children of God wrestler. Kaplan's entire view of living with tradition is one of wrestling with tradition and finding in that wrestle a third way that was modernity changed by tradition and tradition changed by modernity. Each of us as individuals have Torah that shines out of the story of our lives. Each of us has Torah that shines out of the story of our lives. In this way, we are each like a candle. The stuff of our lives ideally glows with the light of Torah, which shines out through us into the world. As a community, then, we are a collective of candles. As a community, we are a menorah. That's one reason I like the symbol of the menorah, the image of a menorah as a symbol of Judaism, because we are a collection of candles, each one of us, a community that light shines out from. Each synagogue community is a menorah from which the light of Torah shines, if only we study Torah, live Torah, and teach Torah. This is how our tradition continues, both grounded in the past and speaking to the moment. Being faithfully Jewish is all about how we do community and allow that light to shine out through us into the world. And that is a question I would like us to continue asking ourselves, how we do that and what that looks like. As we ask ourselves moving forward who we are as community, what we are as community, and how as community we are grounded in Torah, and how we are moving Torah forward into the future. And we do that, we honor our tradition, we honor the memory of Rabbi Mordechai Kaplan, as we mark the 40th anniversary of his yortzeit, and as we celebrate Hanukkah coming up this week. Shabbat Shalom and happy Hanukkah.